Oh, we're pleased to have on the show with us tonight Mary O'Hara, Irish singer and author. Mary, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Let's start at the beginning. You're from Ireland originally, right?
Yes, I was born in Ireland. I did some of my growing up in the west of Ireland, where I was born. Then I did the rest of my growing up in Dublin. And then very young, I got married. But by then, I was already a professional singer, because I started when I was 16. And then I went to live in America. My husband was an American. And then he died. And then I came back to Europe.
And when did you start playing the harp?
When did I stop or start?
Start.
Well, when I was at boarding school, when I was 16, I was taking part in a pageant based on the life of Thomas Moore, the Anglo-Irish poet. And he used the harp as an image of Ireland quite a lot in his work. And so the people who were putting on the pageant thought it would be very appropriate to have somebody come in and teach two or three of the singers, teach them to accompany themselves well enough to take part in this program. So that's what happened. Somebody was brought in, and then the results, they were so happy with the results that they said, oh, let's keep this teacher on. And so I continued with the harp, and it was my final year at school when this all started. And by the end of that year, and I was still 16, they said, well, we want you to do a broadcast. So that was my first broadcast. And then I finished school, and the next year, from then on, I started getting contracts from Radio Éireann, and that eventually blossomed into contracts from the BBC. And by the time I was 20, I had my own television series on BBC prime time. And it's just sort of, it took its own impetus. It was something that sort of decided itself that it was going to be what I should do with my life.
How long did your television series last?
It was a short series of about 4 programs, because now I do other series and they're longer programs, longer numbers of programs. But then that was done at a time when, it was late 50s, and so television was kind of in its infancy. They hadn't got colour television then.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, it was BBC. Ireland didn't get television till 1962. And of course in 1962, by then I was widowed and I went off to a monastery. And I took part in the opening night of television on Radio Éireann, RTE, Radio Telefís Éireann, and then vacated the scene, as I thought, for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
But as you know from reading the autobiography, that's not what happened.
And your records are still selling too.
Again, yes, unknown to myself. By then I had made 3 albums, and just before I went in 1962, I recorded enough material for 3 more. And they started coming out in the 70s, early 70s. I was still in the monastery then. And as you've indicated, unknown to myself, because obviously I had nothing to do with records or anything like that once I was in this monastery. It was a time when that kind of music had become very much listened to and very popular all around the world. And it was later that I was told and discovered that there was, if you look at a graph, there was this tremendous rise in the sale of records in the early and mid 60s and late 60s. But I was very contentedly living the contemplative life, and it didn't matter two hoots to me what was happening to records and things.
Now let's touch on another subject. You started writing some books as well.
Yes, well, that came about, again, like the singing, it was not a chosen career. But when I came out in the mid to late 70s and started singing again, the publishing world seemed to take a very great interest in the life. The very, very unexpected and different phases in my life. The early being professional very early, getting married very young, then being widowed very young, then going into the monastery, and then coming out again and starting all over again. Or rather picking up rather than starting again, because as you say, there were records around. And it was because of a television appearance I made where there was a pretty in-depth interview given. and I also sang. And the next morning, buzz, 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 all the telephones were going. And to make a long story short, the uh, the autobiography went to the highest bidder. Now, I didn't know this till afterwards because I had a manager obviously working on my behalf, and I was just busy practicing my songs and playing the harp. And so I really was not keen at all on writing the autobiography. And I did keep putting off the saying yes for a long, long time. In the end, I gave in, and I'm very happy that I did consent to do it in the end, because it seems to have had a very, very good reception everywhere. You know, not just, well, you could say the public generally, you know, the wider public, but also in the lives of individuals. I mean, I'm still getting letters from people who have been in some mysterious way touched by, you know, the telling of the story, and that's terribly, terribly rewarding. So anyway, that became a bestseller, and then the publisher says, "Please, can we have another book?" And again, humming and hawing, and finally saying yes. And that turned out to be a book called A Song for Ireland, and that came out in '82. The autobiography came out in 81. 80, rather, 80. The hardback in 80. That's The Scent of the Roses. The autobiography came out in 80, yeah, in a paperback in 81. And then A Song for Ireland came out in 1982. And that is, as it says, about Ireland. And what they wanted me to do is to write a book about Ireland, my personal view of Ireland. They wanted it to be as autobiographical as possible without doubling up on the original, you know, the official autobiography. So what I did in the end was, because I haven't lived in Ireland now for so many years, I mean, I visit and work there on and off, I decided to, yes, do a book about Ireland, but seen through the very large number of songs that I love, that I know, and that I sing. That's very much part of my repertoire, because of course I sing other stuff as well. And so the book consists of about 80 songs, some of them in Gaelic, because I do sing in Gaelic, with translations. And the text then is reminiscing about the songs, talking about the provenance of each song and the association I have with those places from where the song comes, and the people who are connected with the songs, who taught them to me, and all that sort of personal connection with the songs and therefore with Ireland. And mustn't forget to say that it has got exceptionally beautiful coloured photographs. So anyway, that again went spanking along and became a bestseller. That's A Song for Ireland. So that then came out as a paperback as well. Well, what they call a limp back, which is a kind of a smarter version of the paperback. And now they have another one. So this one came out last year. It's called Celebration of Love. And again, they said, this was a different publisher, Harder and Stoughton is this one. And they said, we would very much like you to, would you be willing to do us an anthology of your favourite readings on the subject of love, with your own contribution, you know, whatever way you want to deal with the book, have some writing of your own included. So I ended up again with 7 or 8 chapters. When I say ended up again, meaning that I asked them, well, can I have a complete leeway to treat the subject of love in as wide a range, you know, the many facets of love. I didn't want to confine it to romantic love. And they said, absolutely, you know, free range, go ahead, do what you like. So I've divided it into so many chapters, and it's as varied as, for instance, the first one is love and creation, and then there's love and laughter. Love and romance, obviously, that's the plain one to do. Love and friendship, love and God, love and separation, love and place, love and art. And they were very keen that I give one chapter to a selection of my first husband's prose, poems and poetry. And they wanted to call the chapter Love and Richard. He was an American poet, by the way.
Yeah.
So that's the book. And it has line drawings by an American painter friend of mine, Bridget Marlin. And that's romping along very nicely too, thank you.
I'm looking forward to reading that one. I haven't read that one yet.
Yeah. And so then I obviously did the introduction to each chapter. That's the writing bit.
So between the music and the writing, do you get any free time at all?
Well, I do. Obviously, the singing is primary.
Mm-hmm.
And for instance, they wanted that third book in 1980. They wanted it in 82. And I've been so busy with the singing that they didn't get it till 85. And they were very long-suffering, but very content to get it in the end. Constantly shifting the deadline. Yes, and I seem to, in fact, not just seem to, I do more work each year than I have done the previous year. And that means that there's less time for writing than there would have been, say, 8 years ago. Because I've just now come back from a long 6 weeks tour of 22 concerts of Australia. It's my fourth tour of Australia. And I'm now here in Boston with this one-off concert. But I'm actually in the middle of a Canadian tour. So I've come down from Prince Edward Island to do this Boston concert. Now I go back up to Newfoundland, and then I work my way across the country. And when that's finished, which will be sometime in November, I have my final concerts in Tucson, down in Arizona. And then I fly home, and I've got some one-off concerts in the UK, because I live in England, and I've got 2 concerts in Ireland. And suddenly it's 1987. And I've been twice to the States already this year, and as I say, to Australia, so it's a bit sort of non-stop. But I enjoy it. I mean, I don't complain.
Where do you see your career going? In which direction?
Well, I don't sort of plan in that way. In the early days, I was I specialised exclusively in traditional Irish and Scottish material, so that people who know the first 6 records and don't know the later ones will think, that that's just what I do. But since then, all the succeeding records have, while including the odd traditional song, consists much more of middle-of-the-road material, some light classical stuff, and some of my own compositions. So that, and I sing in French now, which I didn't do before,
Mm-hmm.
and the odd German. So that that is a direction that my work has taken that I would not have expected 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the inclusion of the light classical material is something that has happened only in the past 4 or 5 years. So goodness knows what else is going to happen.
Yeah.
And I also do 1 or 2 readings on stage during my concerts. So that is another dimension that's been added to the work. But apart from that, I don't have any grandiose plans. I'm very happy with the way things are going and the way things are shaping almost of their own will. And if something terribly unexpected happens, then and if it's a challenge I'm able to meet, then I'll go ahead and tackle it.
Yeah. How many record albums have you recorded?
Well, there are
altogether?
19 now.
19.
19, yeah. And as I indicated, the ones from when I started singing again, mid late 70s. What's that? What's 6 from 19 is what? 13, is
13.
it? 13. They've been. I've had orchestras accompanying me on those. Apart from an album we brought out at the same time as the second book, A Song for Ireland, and that is just harp and voice again, and it's a selection of 14 or 16 of the songs from the book of the 80 that I mentioned. Now, when I get back to Europe, I have to do another album because I do one a year now, and it's going to be harp music only with other instruments doing things at the same time. The harp playing the melody, and there's one coming out at Christmas, which is unusual in that it is harp and voice, yes, but it's entirely in Gaelic. 3 years ago, I gave a recital at the National Gallery in Dublin of nothing but Gaelic songs. So there was an evening of 30 songs, all in Gaelic. A few of them were Scots Gaelic, because I do sing those. And so that's coming out at Christmas. And that'll be a change from, say, last year's album, which had things on it like Both Sides Now, I'll Be Loving You Always, Here, There and Everywhere, you know, the Beatles song. So,
Yeah.
and a John Denver, Follow Me. So that, when I talked earlier on about the new material, a lot of it consisting of middle of the road stuff, I mean sort of songs. I do quite a few John Denver, and the odd Beatles song, and Gordon Lightfoot, the Canadian songwriter.
And the Rose.
And the Rose, yes, indeed, yeah. And I'm doing one on the current tour in Canada, which is with my other musicians, which I adore singing because I sing it in a Cockney accent. It's from a current hit on Broadway. The musical is called Me and My Girl, and the song is called Take It on the Chin. So I had a great time doing that one. And then, as I say, last year's album also had the flower duet from Lacme, Dilip's opera Lacme, and Andrew Lloyd Webber's Pia Jesu. So it's a very good mix. And when I have the other musicians accompanying me, then I'm able to do the wider range of, the different genre of song.
Do you have a new album that you're working on now? Another new one?
Yes, the one that's going to be done when I get back is going to be just harp only. They may want to put on one or two vocals, but it'll be largely just harp, and that'll be, again, a departure from the normal thing.
And when's your publisher going to be after you for another book?
I don't know. I always hope that they will keep quiet, but I hear them sort of murmuring things about, tossing ideas about, because life gets pretty packed.
Any chance of a movie on the...
I again would hope not. I mean, all these things that come along, I always sort of kick against the goad, as Paul would say. I try to get out of doing these new things. However, I seem to be contradicting myself, because I said to you earlier on this conversation, if something, a new challenge comes up, then I will face it and try and deal with it. Well, that may well happen, So, just don't know.
Well, listen, Mary, thanks very much for being with us on Sounds of the Emerald Isle tonight.
Thank you very much, Jim.
I hope the next time you come up the area, you'll visit with us.
I'd love to. Thank you.
Thanks again.